Attendance. Okay, does anybody have any additions or corrections to the board agenda that are listed?
I had one correction in the link for the proposed 23-24 district budget. I just had when I typed in the special education funding we got from the state, I had typed in 47%, it was actually a 44% increase.
Okay, so we have an agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is open forum. Rules for open forum. 3 minutes per speaker. Open forum shall not take more than a total of 15 minutes. No complaints about individual staff members. All presenters will conduct their business in a manner that meets community standards for decorum. The board will not take action on items presented in open forum. Did anybody sign up? Does anybody wish to speak?
Can I confirm that the emails were received today?
Which emails?
I sent one, and Valerie sent one, and then there are some parent emails.
Yes.
Okay,
I forward yours to the rest of the board,
thank you.
and the rest of the emails I received had the board members on them.
Thank you.
So there's maybe a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next up is the consent agenda. Does anybody need anything pulled from the consent agenda and placed later in the meeting?
Can we go back to open forum
Sure.
for a minute? Sorry. I didn't really prepare anything because I think my email kind of said it all. I'm really nervous, but I didn't prepare anything in advance, but I think that I would really, really appreciate it if you would take the time to read those emails that I sent and forwarded to you before you head in to your vote this evening. I'm honestly kind of stalling also because I have a parent on the way who really wanted to talk during open forum and she's parking. But there was a part in my email that I left out and now I'm trying to remember what it was and I don't remember. But I think, like Eric said, if you remember back in February, everything I talked about our program, I'm not able to do all those wonderful things if I don't have the support to do it, and if I'm just by myself. And I was really, really, really feeling the strain of that this year, of trying to run the program by myself. And I will tell you, the burnout sets in and makes it real and makes it even harder for me to make that happen. So these kids mean everything to me. And I'm standing here through my nervousness because it's really, really important that you hear this message. So thank you for considering.
All right, we are going to move on. Did we have a motion? No. All right, so I am looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is the budget calendar.
Just a quick update before we get to the budget. The budget is built to fit our fund balance policy that we reapproved last month, which is to hit the 25% policy. And then I just put in a link to show you at this time of the year where we've historically come in as far as the budget, as far as our fund balance. So our policy calls for 25%, and then you can see what I put in there. That roughly means that it covers about $3,800 per student. The average fund balance for our border SCRED districts is about $2,900, and the average per student of districts similar in our size is $3,300.
So, does anybody have any questions regarding that? If not, we are going to then go into new business.
Okay. We'll start with the first link, the proposed 2023-24 district budget. You have a packet in your folders that were on the table, which I'll get to it's not the first thing we'll get to, but you do have a packet that will, if you want to go through paper copies of the budget, that is in there, or you can follow along on your computer and or on the screen. So typically when we're going through our budget, by the time we get to July 1st, which is coming up very quickly, typically our expenditures and revenues are usually pretty exact. Typically we're within that 1%, so that monthly information I give you where our expenditures are versus the school year, historically we've come in usually within 1% of meeting our budget. A review from last month, on June 1st, our expenditures versus prediction, you can see, or you saw that June 1st was 91% of the school year roughly, and at that time we had spent about 89% of our budget. It's under prediction at that point, and you know, that also includes expenses that we did cover with the roof and with the increase in health insurance contribution for staff. Our revenue appears to be doing well, other than in the area of food service, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit here as we go through the budget. But we are still within percentages of what was budgeted for and what we've expended within that 1% range. We won't know totally for the end of this school year until we get further into the summer, early fall, as we wrap up the budget year and things kind of still keep coming in over the July and August months that impact the 22-23 budget. Next, I have our proposed budget in a spreadsheet, and if you just look at the first column, that is our audited actual budget or balance in these areas: the general, food service, community service, and debt service. Our general fund is broken into two areas: unassigned and reserved. The reserved is typically for MA billing, which is special ed expenditures, LTFM, and capital projects. So the unassigned is why I put that in blue, the numbers that we kind of go off of for our anything else other than those reserved areas. We typically spend our reserve. This year we spent, as you can see, all of it, mostly because of the roof project, but the MA billing and capital projects we historically do. So the unassigned, the blue column at the July 1st of 22, you can see where our unassigned fund balance is. You can see what our projected general revenue is going to be versus expenditures, and where we feel that number will be on July 1st. With that, you can also see food service started with a positive budget a year ago now. You can see what our projected revenue is with food service. This is still not a perfect prediction, as the state has not come out with the new revenue formula for the next school year. We expect to get that beginning to mid-July. We haven't seen it yet, so we built the revenue based on this year's reimbursement rates and our best estimate of how many students we feel will eat breakfast and lunch now that it's free. We did go back to our COVID years, which we did have more enrollment then, so it's hard to get the exact number of kids eating because we have less kids now, but we did try to project back and look at historical numbers, how many kids ate then when it was free versus this year. We had less kids eat. So the food service, I anticipate that going up, but it's just hard to tell right now. So what advisement was to use this year's reimbursement rates, and at least we know we'll get that. We anticipate it to be higher. And then you can see the expenditures that are predicted for next year. A lot of that is because of our food products going up. We know last month we approved our milk commodities being higher. So a big part of why our expenditures are still not meeting our revenue is the food costs, which we all experience in our personal lives. But we did make some major reductions in food service to get closer to that, as where we were projected about 2 weeks ago. We can't sustain that, it shouldn't sustain that. So our projected balance in food service would be, as you can see, about negative $90,000. Community service, we started this year, the board last year at this time decided not to zero that out. So we did start last year at that number you can see. You can see where the revenue versus expenditures are. The biggest reason this is not balancing is our pool is expensive to run. It's a great thing for our community and our staff and our students, but the pool and maintaining the pool, keeping the pool up and running is a big reason why those numbers are where they're at. Obviously, it didn't help starting where we started, but the pool is a big reason. Just the cost to keep the pool running is a factor. The debt service, which is coming in for our taxpayers and things like that, is pretty consistent to what we've seen. We did under project a little bit in revenue, but we are still carrying a healthy balance in our debt service. Before I go on, are there any questions on those numbers that are in that chart? So our fund balance policy says that we would take this blue number, the 4,169,291, and we would pay back to food service and community service. So that's kind of where this next paragraph goes. After paying those back and bringing those to zero, our fund balance would not be that blue number. It would be this number in bold, 4,032,289. In order to maintain our policy of 25%, we need to have a fund balance of 3,777,022. So you see we have a cushion based on anything that's currently in the budget of about $255,000. If we didn't spend that cushion and didn't add anything back in, our fund balance percentage would be 26.7. I don't know if the board would like me to go into options or go through the rest of the revenue projections first. Can certainly do it either way.
Maybe the revenue first.
Okay, and that's the packet that's in your folder, which I'll try to keep you on. If you're looking at the paper colors, what color I'm looking at. The first one that I'm on is our general fund summary, which is the white page that you have. And you can see the comparisons for the last 4 school years. The big number, which is in the chart that we just looked at, but the number that we project for our general fund is about 15,358,526. You can kind of see where those numbers are coming from as far as property taxes, local county revenues, from state sources, and then from federal sources. We did see some dip in our federal revenue, especially with impact aid. You can see 2 years ago we were even as high as 135,000 there. Last year budgeted for 35. We found out we do not qualify for impact aid any longer, so that was a big revenue loss. And then the other one, I guess I really wanted to highlight state sources. You can see that's the 44% in special ed that we saw the increase from 1.667 to $2 million in special ed revenue. But are there questions on the general fund page before I go to the other funds? Next is, I believe, your purple sheet, which is our other funds, food service, community service fund, and debt service, so you can see where we kind of pulled this money from, or where these dollars are coming from. Food service we talked about, we're still waiting to hear from the state what that reimbursement's going to be. And community service, you can see where our revenue's coming from as far as how it's funding that program, to see where we got that revenue from. And then our debt service is again from the property taxes and from state sources. Questions on the purple sheet? Okay, next is the yellow packet, which is a little bit longer. I won't go through every single line item, but this is to help Joanne make sure that all of our line item things are also matching in Skyward, but also it breaks down those fund summaries into more specifics, where they're coming from, how much, instead of just giving a general number, where all the dollar amounts are coming from. And it's broken by general. You can see where the food is if you scroll or flip through those pages longer. It just breaks it down more into the specific areas that fall into each of those categories. So I don't know if, as people saw the board packet, had questions on anything, line item in there. Otherwise, the next, I won't rush you, I see you're all still on the yellow sheet.
One quick question.
Yep.
So we're anticipating that the a la carte is gonna be less?
Yeah, so that's one thing we're looking at in food service is this year, we did not bring as much revenue as we thought. And that's one thing we're gonna look at is A, are we charging enough? B, what happens with extra food? Are we not making what the kids like? So that's one of the things, our head cook and I are gonna talk about and look at. If we need to reduce days, that may be an option we may consider if we don't run it 5 days a week. A la carte, we barely broke even that in a la carte, where what a lot of districts say is that's a revenue provider for school districts, and for us this last year it was not.
The pool concessions is showing 0 the last 2 years. Do we make a profit on concessions then?
So do you know?
Or break even, or?
Not really, the pool manages all the outside concessions for the activities, so there's a lot of activity, but not necessarily a lot of profit.
Okay, thank you. The green sheet, which is next, is just, which we talked about back in December, but it just shows where our levy dollars are coming from. So, that's obviously part of our revenue. So you can see where we're bringing in money, where there were some adjustments from year past, but this is just breaking down the taxpayer contribution to some of our revenue for the school district. The salmon color sheet is just again talking about the general education aid, which we talked about a little bit when we talked about the general fund summary, but you can see it broken down into more of the specific areas. Coming out of the state, one of the concerns with free breakfast and lunches for all, because our districts had a high free and reduced population, is what they would do with that compensatory revenue. The state did pass that districts would be held harmless for at least the next few years, and we had a pretty good year of getting our free and reduced applications filled out. So that was a good thing for us, but you can see where the other areas of state general ed are coming from for our school for next year.
The last 2 pages supposed to be blank.
They might have been the way it got transferred over from Excel to Google Sheets, so,
Make sure it doesn't
yeah,
miss something.
yeah. And then the very last sheet, which is, I don't know what color you wanna call it, but it's the food service sheet. This is the one that we probably spent a lot of time on in the last few weeks. Just figuring out the breakfast, lunch reimbursement rates, and how many meals we feel we'll serve. The breakfast number of meals is pretty similar to what we did during COVID years, a little higher than this year. We kept lunch more consistent to what our numbers were this year, just because it wasn't a lot higher during our COVID years, and I didn't want to over project just to make the numbers work. So that's our projection on how many we think will eat breakfast and lunch. I anticipate them being higher than this year, but I don't want to over project how many meals we're going to serve without knowing. So that's just how we got those state numbers and federal numbers for our food service. Questions on the revenue, any of the revenue projections?
Did we, what about just going back to the meals or to food service? Are we down in meals from the previous year?
From previous year, yes, we were down. We were down in also how much money we got back from families, because years past we didn't have, kids didn't have to pay, families didn't have to pay. So I'd have to look in my email. I have the number how many we were down, but our enrollment also went down, so it's not.
So we served less meals and our meal debt is higher.
Correct. Our meal debt.
Are we still trying to collect?
We are still trying to collect. Yep, we're probably at about $9,000 from families right now, which is down from where it was even a month ago, but we've been higher than that most of the school year. If you want me to keep going in revenue, I'll continue on this proposed budget sheet. The revenue is built around 971 students. That's what the state prediction is. We did end this school year at about 985. So I wanted to underproject a little bit in case we see what happened this school year. And it's certainly down from what was budgeted for this year, which was budgeted at 1,020 students. We saw increases in the state general education aid, compensatory, which we talked about. The state gave more money towards Indian education, as well as we saw money for a library aid, as well as for school counselor or school psychologist or school nurse. I put in school counselor because that would be a new position for us. We have the other ones, which is what that aid would go towards. We talked about a little bit when I corrected the agenda. The special education money had the biggest impact for us, with them increasing it by 44%. That was a good way to help us offset some of that ESSER money that I didn't put into the budget. Not all the way, but it certainly helped our budget and will certainly help our special education program. We talked a little bit about where our revenue decreased. Federal sources was a big part. We've historically seen at least 50,000 in impact aid. It's been around 100,000 for next year. That's slated to be 0. We did continue to get our Pathway 2 grant, which helps our early childhood program. And we're struggling to collect some fees, both with laptops and lunches. Things that the board could consider with we can talk about laptop fees and things when we get to July, but for how many fees we took in, we're also spending a lot of time with mailing and stamps and trying to recoup that money. That's something we can consider in July if we want to talk about laptop fees, but basically we took in about $6,000, $6,400 in laptop fees, which is about 259 kids. We have more than that in grades 4 through 12 who should have paid that. So we struggled to get fees not only in lunch service, but also with technology. Other reasons our revenue changed is we decreased in students. We were projected to be at 1,020. We were about 980 to 985 all year. And positively, we did get more reimbursement because we have a higher free and reduced lunch population. And we talked about the impact aid from the federal government. Things that are currently not in the budget that we've done, there's been reduced of 6 assignments from the high school, reduced a special education teacher at the high school, a reduction as a smart mentor in the high school. Right now, Empower is set to have a paraprofessional role and a teacher. Class sizes in the high school are very similar to last year. We've strived to keep all classes under 30. I believe right now they are all under 30 in core classes. Electives are generally even less than that. At the elementary school, some things that affected the budget are some changes. The kindergarten position who retired at FES, and due to also having some other smaller class sizes at FES, that position did get, it's still in the budget, but it was reallocated to Hinckley Elementary School. Hinckley Elementary School also reduced to Smart Mentor. FES did some other restructuring with their ADSYS and special education, which isn't out of the budget, it just got reallocated to Hinckley Elementary. We did add at Finlayson Elementary, the 4 days a week VPK, just like HES has, and a paraprofessional is there to offset that position. So FES will be 1 teacher less. In the elementary schools, if you take it all as a whole, class sizes are very similar. We try to keep 20 or so in the lower grades, K1, 2, and then not to exceed 25 as they get older and go higher. We did have one addition of a paraprofessional to help our school psychologist. We have to have a virtual school psychologist next year, so just to have a staff member to help them get to the students, get the students to the school psych and work through any paperwork that may come with that, was the recommendation for that. Transportation budget has decreased. We have reduced 1 bus driver in the budget. We have still are set to purchase a bus. We're waiting to find out when that's available. And the activity bus has been removed from the transportation department. Otherwise, most of the transportation budget is pretty similar or slightly reduced from last year. Staff development budget, we are mandated to spend 2% of our general fund on that, so that really, it really depends where our general fund is how much money staff development has, so we're keeping costs within that 2%. We've seen an increase in costs for diesel, water, electric, and gas. And we've talked about food prices. They have also risen. And again, we don't know the reimbursement fully from the state as far as what how that's going to help us food service. So we have made significant cuts there. However, commodity bids, as we found out last month, did increase in most areas. And athletics budget has also decreased, and some jersey things have been put on hold for a year, and the overall athletic budget is down from this past year. Just some other things as the board is going to move to hopefully approve a budget. This will be a teacher negotiation year and a support staff negotiation year. For the teachers, we have built in a percentage for the budget for salaries and insurance. Support staff salaries and insurance are already set. Their negotiations will affect 24, 25, 25, 26. When the teachers negotiate, that will affect this upcoming school year and the following school year. So in that support staff settlement, you can see what was agreed to for wages and budget and benefits. That's already built into the staff costs. The school board in July will finalize some other things as far as substitute rates, athletic fees, laptop fees, some of our other fees that we have. So that will be coming in July. The federal rate for reimbursement for mileage is 65.5 cents. That's built into the budget. We've already approved the capital budget, so that doesn't need approval. And like I started, the budget is currently built to maintain our fund balance at 25%. There are some options that we can talk about as far as adding back into the budget. And our big thing that we're going to have to watch as we go through this next year is food service. One of our plans is not only internally to look at that more closely, but the school board's also going to see all these numbers, but especially food service much more often, the breakdown. You see right now monthly where our overall budget is compared to the school year. We're going to compare and show revenue versus projections in all these areas, at least quarterly, but that's one of our plans so that we're not coming to June all the time and finding that we're in a bigger hole than we anticipated. Questions?
Ryan, how does our charge for school lunch compare to our neighboring school districts, East Central and Pine City?
I'd have to go back and look exactly. We were lower. If you remember back to July, the state minimum was $3.31. We came in, I think we might have raised it right to $3.31, which I'd have to go back and look. I think that's still lower than our neighbors, but I can certainly get that to you as far as where we were compared to our neighbors. I just don't know that off the top of my head.
Can you also get like à la carte?
Comparables on à la carte.
When we do an à la carte, is there a separate,
Yeah.
no, is there another, food service worker that just does à la carte, or they
It's-
just kind of split the duties?
They split the duties.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll go back to just under that chart. So we do have cushion in our budget right now, where we're slated to be above the 25%. So I had put two recommendations that we've talked about a lot. They don't have to be the only recommendations, but these are the two recommendations that would fit in this extra budget. We've talked a lot about a first grade teacher at Hinckley Elementary School and a behavior interventionist at Hinckley-Finlayson High School. Ms. Coonsey did bring up, and you've taken some emails from parents about a second teacher at Empower. That is certainly something also the board could consider, but I'd be happy to answer, or between Kim, Bonnie, Joanne, and I, answer any questions on those 2 or 3 topics. I know Mr. Richter's brought up some 6 classes at the high school as well. We can certainly talk about those things. These were my 2 recommendations that I put in, and simply not that the other areas are not important, because they absolutely are. Just in my opinion, these impacted the most kids, was why I listed these 2. Not that anything else couldn't or shouldn't be discussed, but I chose these 2 because first grade teacher at HES impacts all the first graders over there, and a behavior interventionist would impact the entire high school possibly. So it's not the only things we have to discuss. Those were just the 2 that I put on there for board to discuss and talk about as well. But we can certainly talk about anything else that's not in the budget.
How many are in the first grade? 58 currently. What's that? How many teachers? Currently 3. So there's 19 to 20. If we were to go 4 sections, it would bring down to 14 to 15. At the start of the school year. Right. Don't know what happens.
So, well, I was just gonna say, the behavior interventionist, I think for sure we definitely do need that at the high school, because I think we do have a lot of behaviors that need to be addressed. As far as the other options, I'm definitely open to some other alternatives. For me too, I think that we should support too our students who are aiming to strive to get their college courses done in the high school during that time. And I know there isn't as many in those classes simply because they're tougher, and everything. So I know that we're not gonna have the 15 or 12 minimum that we usually strive for. But I would like to see something more for support for those students who are aiming for that.
My question is if we have 255 cushion here, and you take out the behavior interventionist and the first grade teacher, what are you left with?
It's hard to predict exactly, because if you get a new teacher, that costs less than someone with a master's and 30, we guesstimate 80,000 when you include benefits for a teacher.
Okay.
So if you take off 80,000 from 255, you're at,
The behavior interventionist is gonna be on
if it's in the budget,
but it'll be with the teachers.
right,
Yeah.
so we would budget about 80,000 with,
For both.
for each of those.
each
Each
of
of those
them.
would be budgeted about $80,000.
And then what about roughly the difference of the para that we have listed for the ELC versus a teacher, which again, you're gonna tell me that depends on which teacher
Yeah.
we get, but is that roughly a number?
That would have a little more option if you left it staffed as we historically had, which was 2 teachers and a para. That would be about an $80,000 difference. There could be, and I don't know if it's as popular, but there could be an option just to do 2 teachers and not have a paraprofessional. That would be about a $40,000 increase, because some of those benefits are already factored into what we've already budgeted for. So between 40 and 80,000, depending if there was restructuring and just had 2 teachers, or if there was 2 teachers and a para. So if you added all three of those that we just talked about, that's between 200 and 280,000. If you're wondering costs of the, I believe there were 3 college classes that we didn't add when I kind of calculated the cost of what we paid at the college, and the teachers with benefits, that's about $19,400.
So we're over,
You'd be between 220,000 and 300,000 if you approved all 4, which is over our,
so if we take 300,000, just because that would be the top, we're over by 45,000.
correct.
So what is 45,000 over that we would eat into the fund balance?
Here's my calculator.
Yeah.
If we were,
Or what would our
percentage be?
yes, sorry,
The percentage would be
if we ate in the 45,000?
24.7%,
So roughly.
roughly, yeah.
If we went with 2 teachers and Empower, would our revenue increase them?
It could, so,
Or-
yes, it could, and having 2 teachers would allow that. Right now, I think the waiting list starts with Hinckley-Finlayson kids, which are already enrolled. I don't know that perfectly, maybe Ms. Hinckley could help with that. But I think some of the letters you saw would allow us to help move kids through the program quicker, which maybe some of those Hinckley-Finlayson kids would get their, or any of the kids would get their credits and allow to move that waiting list a little bit more. So it might not be a revenue producer day 1, but it certainly would be long-term. If that makes sense, if I said that correctly.
Would we be able to service as many students if we just did 2 teachers at Empower as we would if we had 2 teachers and a para? Does that affect?
Is that okay for Paul and Ms. Hickey?
Is it okay for you? Oh, okay. So on paper, we would be able to enroll the same amount of students. So we take about 12 to 15 students per teacher. However, taking that admin person away, puts a lot more administrative duties on us that we would need to find the time in our day to do. So however that would look, we might have to be creative how that would look, and I don't know if that goes back to reducing a couple students or opening up more time somewhere, but yes, on paper you would double the students that we have with just 1 teacher, but it would be more difficult.
Thank you.
What's the maximum capacity of the Empower building?
Because of the bathroom, only 1 bathroom, they can have 30 people in that building. So if there was 2 staff, 28 kids. At least that's what the fire code I was always told, so.
How many behavior interventionists do we currently have at the high school?
We have a half a dean of students who splits the role of activities director. We have a couple teachers who teach a class to help students with behaviors, but we don't, other than the half dean of students, it's the half dean of students and Miss Hinckley. We don't have a behavior interventionist.
This is not to be confused with a counselor.
This would be different than the counselor. This would be just to, I mean, and Ms. Hinckley could talk about what her plans were, but it'd be just to help with some of the more minor, I mean, I'll let you do that.
Yep, kind of the tentative plan right now would be that it would be somebody that would be proactive and helping monitor hallways. Right now, we don't have anybody monitoring the hallways during class, checking bathrooms to make sure kids are where they need to be, making sure kids that are in the hallways have passes. Also helping support teachers in the classroom with minor behavior, so a student that's struggling, being able to call somebody for some of that minor stuff, helping make sure that kid has what they need to be successful, supporting the teacher with maybe they're struggling with something in the classroom with behaviors, just somebody to be more proactive. Mandy and I spend a lot of our time reacting to things, and not just having another person to help with that, being proactive, doing some more restorative justice, so a student that did something like, made a mess in the lunchroom, being able to sit with that student, clean something in order to restore what they did, so that consequences, just giving out consequences, but actually being able to do things right away, and being more intentional about what we're doing and having somebody to kind of help change the behaviors versus just giving consequences and hoping they change.
Can I speak to the teacher side of that a little bit? Right, and this goes back many years when Mr. Masterson was principal even. From the teacher side, it ends up being that the people in the office are usually too overbooked to do the job that this position can do. So it ends up being that, it takes a few days for us to get a response from the office because they're so overbooked. Our principal, for example, can't do some of the, they can't leave their office and make the physical appearance that a school needs for the culture of the school. So things like that really, it really compounds on top of itself and really changes what our potential is, both in the classroom and like school community wise. So, and then basically, I hate talking like this because people always think teachers are lazy when they talk like this, but then essentially part of being a behavioral interventionist, if there isn't a person to do it, it becomes part of our job description because there's no one else to do it. So in fairness to us trying to teach art, for example, I can just be hopefully more of an art teacher and less of a behavioral interventionist, So those are some of the angles that I just wanted to add to Kim's summary. Thanks.
How difficult is it to find a person in that position?
No idea.
Okay.
I'm guessing all these are gonna be, we're having,
Right.
It's just the world we're in, but.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Because adding the dean at the elementary has helped with behaviors, hasn't it? Quite a bit.
Self-managed behaviors, yeah.
And even to kind of echo what Mr. Richter said, I know it's allowed Bonnie to get in and do other things than just deal with behaviors. She's able to be with her teachers and see what's happening in classrooms, and you're not just dealing with behaviors all day long.
So what kind of qualifications are needed for that position?
Well, ideally, having somebody that has experience with, counseling with administrative type things, it just kind of depends. But I've done some research around some different trainings and things that person could do to look at restorative justice or look at how to respond differently and support teachers. So it just kind of having somebody who is in education, who's been a teacher, who understands what teachers go through, would really help. I think you could, as long as with the right training, you could find somebody very qualified to do it.
I would imagine we'd post looking for that, but minimum we want them to have at least a teacher license. That they could be on a special assignment kind of thing like we've done with our curriculum director and dean of students in the past. Or her.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Could you just just provide a summary of is it 4 college classes three college classes that are potentially on the chopping block?
Yep, one was college art, one was college chemistry, and the other one was, I don't know the name, but Ms. Beckfar was gonna have
Native American Lit class.
Native American Lit class. And those were the 3 that we're specifically talking about.
And how many signed up for each?
8 in the Native American Lit class, college chem was 5, and then college art and college painting were 8 and 7.
One of those is offered one semester, the other's offered the other semester.
So students, when it was time to pick their classes for the next school year, those were listed and those students made the election?
Yes, and those numbers could change. Kids change their classes up through the first week of school. We have new enrollments, so those numbers could definitely change either way. But yeah, that's based on registration.
So what happens then if they sign up for a college class, but it's not offered? How does that affect their schedule?
They pick a different class, a different elective or a different
Okay.
Or some, especially if it's college classes, may elect to take it through Pine Tech, PSEO instead of in school. So some kids have done or could do that if we don't offer it here.
So before the school year begins, they'll have an opportunity to make a change if that class is not offered then? Or it's already been?
I believe it's already been done because I think the PSEO window had to be done by end of May, if I'm remembering correctly. They would have already been told that, I believe.
So all three of these classes are or were available to go online for PSEO?
I don't think the Native American Lit class, but I believe Eric, your classes.
If Pine Tech gets enough people, they run those classes, yeah.
In College Chem, yes.
Art and chemistry's hard because it's obviously a hands-on class, and if you're not on campus or with the instructor, it's hard, but some kids go on campus and do that.
Have these classes been offered prior years?
Not the Native American Lit class, that was gonna be a brand new class.
So the other
gathered ones, yes.
How many students has there been in the past?
Oh, good question.
When we
Does it
first,
fluctuate?
it fluctuates. Ms. Richter and I have talked about this multiple times in my, it fluctuates. Chemistry, when we first added it, came on strong, and then it, as classes kind of move on or take it, or maybe then they do fluctuate. Single digits to low teens. Difference in some other years is we weren't facing some of the same financial constraints as we have been this year. So it may not have come to the school board to consider not having those. I don't know if it did or didn't, but.
Do we try to stay above 10? Or what is, I know there's not.
I think what it
set-
says is 15, but the hard part is we haven't had some of the same budget restrictions, so we've been able to run them when they're single digits some years. We've been working under the year of 10 this year, or rule of 10.
My concern is that if we don't offer some college courses too to challenge some more, our students, that they'll go elsewhere. Especially if we have the staff that has the training and the knowledge and wants to teach our students what they know. It would be nice to have it in-house.
What do they get paid? Is it $3,000 for the extra assignment?
Yes, if it's an extra class out of their 5, it's 3,000.
And that's what we're referring to here on these?
Well, but there's also the fee, so the reason it's higher than that, so there'd be 3 teachers, so that's about 9,000, it's a little bit higher because of benefits. But there's also a $3,000 cost to the college to run the class, so that's why the number got to 19,000, is also, we have to pay the college to run that class with us.
And would staff be willing to take a smaller amount if there's a smaller class? You ever asked that question?
I have not asked that question.
One concession I thought of off the top of my head is if we came up with a schedule that some of these classes were offered every other year, then kids would have the predictability. They'd say, oh, I need to take this my junior year because that's when it's offered. That would be, a concession that could make sure that kids know that they have these options for them during their academic career.
Yeah. And we've done that with some of our other classes in the high school. We had to move them every other year, and it did help.
Eric, do you think some of the teachers would take a smaller stipend if there's less students?
We just the last contract round, we bumped up from 25 to 3,000. It is a lot of work. Ironically, that 6th class is usually like your favorite class. So in some ways, if you do the math, the school district pays us about 10,000 per class to teach, right? So even 3,000 is a bargain. So I have a hard, I don't know. you could say maybe, and you could also say probably not, so, sorry.
So is it too late at this point to do an every other year for those juniors to know that they won't get it next year? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, my thought would be we would offer these again next year and see if we can get enrollments up for the next year, and so kids that didn't get a chance to take it could then enroll next year. It would just be seniors who would have that opportunity. But I fully intend to, as long as the teachers want to offer them the following year, try and increase enrollment for next year.
And that's been how we've done it past practice. The ones that don't say every other year, we try to offer every year and see, offer by enrollment then. Is at least what past practice has been as well.
Do you know the kids that are signed up for them? Are they juniors, seniors?
I don't have that right now. Katie has all the enrollment stuff with her.
I wonder though too, if there's some students though that don't sign up for them because maybe they had in the past and then it got canceled and had to redo their schedule, so they're like, well, I don't wanna have to go through that again, so they just don't sign up.
So,
Can I ask on the first grade teacher? Kindergarten fluctuates a lot when they first start. Is first grade as volatile as kindergarten? I mean, will the numbers fluctuate that much that?
Not as much, I mean, it's your typical move-ins is what you would see, but it's not, I mean, you don't have the late enrollees like you do in kindergarten. So they're more steady then.
Extra para to help support those 3 teachers?
So. No, cause it's really hard to divide, so what we're looking at is Amplify is a very rigorous, curriculum, right? So we're trying to get, even at 14, 15 kids, it's really difficult and challenging to run a small group with just one person. Where you have 19, 20, it's that much more challenging, so we're trying to minimize,
I'm just thinking you have an issue with
impact.
space anyway, so if we could.
I have rearranged, like, I would still have one teacher to move, but there is available space with only doubling up, 2 special education teachers at this point, even if we were to move this, cause I moved speech, I took away our meeting room, which is fine, we can just meet in classrooms and whatnot, but, there is space there, we have rearranged, so if it does happen, we have the space.
And another thing to consider in a year from now, we're gonna have for this upcoming year, we're gonna have 4 kindergarten sections. In a year from now, we anticipate that to move to 4 first grade sections, so this would hopefully get us someone, not only to help this year, but also with helping the anticipation of needing a first grade teacher next year. Especially if kindergarten numbers stay where they're at.
is it fair to say that, changing the first grade numbers to 4 sections would help with behaviors at the early age?
Absolutely. It's fair to say that. If any of you attended or watched kindergarten graduation, it's hard. We have some challenging behaviors, and a lot of that goes back to how the state now identifies our early childhood education for DD, developmentally delayed, and it's harder to qualify, so they don't maybe necessarily get the services when needed right away, and the child find through the state of Minnesota it's a longer process. So even when the kids do need a little bit extra support, it's a longer process. So yes, being able to divide and conquer would help a lot, or some.
So would we also then need next year, we went with a 4th section of first graders this year. Would we have to go to a 4th section of second graders the following year then?
I believe 19, unless we see a huge increase in enrollment, I think second grade is more manageable at 19, 20 kids than it is in first grade. It's just kids are learning to read more, you don't have such foundational skills that you're working on, your phonics and reading awareness. You can do less one-on-one and more small group in second grade. I'd be more comfortable pulling back the support in second grade, I guess, than first.
How many are we projecting in kindergarten this upcoming school year?
In kindergarten, right now, 58,
Okay,
very similar to first grade numbers.
right.
And I think we'll see some more enrollment in kindergarten yet, cause not everybody, I mean, we just have the kids that have enrolled in preschool and a few drop-ins here and there, but we haven't hit our high peak of enrollment yet, I don't think, for kindergarten.
Okay.
Sorry, we were late because we didn't know if you were by the new office or over here, so, I think we missed our opportunity to just, not saying that Empower is more important than first grade or any other areas, but, I brought the kids, 3 which have already graduated, this year, and my daughter who's on the waiting list, my son's also in yellow. What Empower means to me as a parent, during distant learning and COVID, I know both parents and teachers struggled really hard. Mine, especially Jace, the one in the middle, was like a grade and a half behind during distant learning. Once he was enrolled into Empower, he attended school every single day, got perfect attendance, and actually finished all of his credit courses 3 months early. Amid, at the end, he also finished all of his credit courses probably about 4 months early, and Angus and Black graduated a year early. He did over 19 credits in the last couple months of school. That right there went from kids who didn't have, who were struggling in school and in a larger environment or whatever, to more personal one-on-one attention. I know Jace started to gain faith in himself again. Sorry to put you out there, honey. But just seeing their overall attitudes at home change and their spirits being uplifted. Val has done an amazing job, so did Mr. Jensen. Bella, you know, she's looking forward into hopefully getting into the program, but I've talked to a couple other parents who just break up how much Empower has changed for their kids. I think that a lot of them who didn't know if they would graduate at all actually were able to and are looking forward to going into a trade, you know, a trade industry or being able to go to college now because they didn't feel like they had the support in just the normal high school environment from teachers. Either they weren't feeling like they were getting the help that they wanted. I know that teachers, my sister's a teacher, I know how overwhelming it can be, having a lot of students who need help and not having enough time in the day. I just think Empower, it's a great facility. I think they're doing a lot of good. So I hope that you'll really consider, you know, being able to do the extra teacher or the, you know, extra para teacher, whatever the decision is. But it is a very good program. Guys, do you want to say anything? I put you out there on the spot, but I can do that.
Well, I'd like to say that Coonsey and Jensen, for me, are easily one of the best teachers I've ever had in my life. And they really have turned my life around for the better.
Yeah, that is true. I didn't give a crap about, or I didn't really care about school that much when the whole COVID Zoom call things. I just never showed up to school. I would just talk to my friends the whole time, never give a crap. But then when I talked to my brother saying I want to go to Empower, he said it didn't work out for him. I said I'm gonna try my thing, and I got in the same day as my cousin, and it changed my life. So it's beast. Amina and I are about to become what's the word again? I forgot. We're about to be masonry or something like that for cementing for the 49ers. So we're trying our best, but having Coonsey and Steva and Jensen changed a lot. So they actually they actually knew us a lot. They talked to us every day, made sure we were okay and stuff. And plus they had a studio in there. You know, it was really fun in that room. So I think Empower's a great facility and a great opportunity for kids who are struggling or needs a little more attention for, work can get that done.
Yeah. Yeah, the ELC did help me a lot. I did start off pretty bad. I didn't go too much, but after a little while, it changed my view, and they helped me out with my future plans too.
So I'm not in Empower yet, but from what I see, it helped my friends and family a lot. And from what I see, they already they were doing great, but for how many teachers that they had over there, they were trying their hardest. And now that it's gonna be less this year, I think that like more support should go into there because it's already hard, and it just might put too much stress on the teachers and that our teacher, because there's only gonna be one teacher over there next year, and she's gonna do best because she's like a really good teacher, but I think that she could use some help with another teacher just to keep like all the kids up and herself up so that it just doesn't get too overwhelming.
Alright, thank you. So we have to approve our budget. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve a budget?
Are we looking to approve it as with these two additions, or?
However you want to do it. However you want to write and read it.
Do we wanna vote on some of the additions separately or not? Does that make sense or not?
If that's what you think, Leo.
I don't know, just a thought.
So, do we wanna vote on everything separate? Vote first approve what we have sitting here, and then do the cushion?
What are the options we're looking at?
Well, first grade teacher at HES.
Right.
Behavior interventionist at HFHS. The other things that came up tonight were adding the 6-hour classes or 6-hour assignments back. Adding a teacher at Empower. Which would put our fund balance.
If you add all four, it would put our fund balance at about 24.7%. And the board can choose, you guys can choose, it's your policy, so you guys can do that. Our policy after the 25% says we would only make cuts if we got to 15% or lower. So, in our policy, it does say that for you. If you wanted to add all four.
But we would be over our fund balance if we didn't hire, we put a cushion in there of $40,000 in some of the positions, correct?
Depending who correct, it depends on who
So if
we
you're
end up
looking
hiring.
at 0.3 under the fund balance.
We could very well come even above 25%. It depends who comes in interviews and.
Yeah.
If we find
Yep.
anybody.
Yep. We just kind of go middle of the road and best guess on what their insurance contribution might be, but we try to hire the best, so.
So first grade behavior interventionist and a teacher at Empower would be about, type out our cushion, say 80,000 a position.
Depending again on how Empower, if Empower kept their paraprofessional, it would be between 200 and 280,000, most of that cushion, yeah.
So would adding a second teacher at Empower help with the behaviors at the high school then?
At first, well, even long-term, it certainly could. I mean, at first, that first part of that waiting list is high school, our current high school kids, so class sizes would go down here. Could it help with behaviors? It could. It kind of depends on, I don't know all who's on that waiting list and kind of their backgrounds, but it could lower class sizes here, which always helps with behaviors when you have, you know, less kids sitting in your class.
But the money that would be brought in could maybe offset that 0.3% that we are.
Yep, it could. Empower kids weigh about 1.2, which most high school kids do too, but elementary don't weigh as high because they don't have the as many after school components as high school kids are. So all high school kids, including Power, do way more according as far as state dollars. So, you know, a typical 6th grader is weighed in the state size is 1.0, 7 through 12 they weigh as 1.2, and that's to help again offset the after school components that Empower does, or their extracurricular activities. So that's why high school kids weigh a little bit more.
So just to recap, Empower, we can have 20 students if there's 2 staff. And we currently have how many students, or how many were there last year?
Total for the year or at one time?
I think we averaged around 17 if I'm.
Average was
And we can add how many with another teacher?
Average was 17, which is on the high end of the range.
Yeah. So we could have 11 kids.
Okay.
But if we,
We had can I just?
But if they're coming from Hinckley, if they're coming from the high school.
We already have their revenue, but it would help, 2 staff would help them, you know, get the kids that they need and possibly even get them through their credits quicker, so we don't have such a big waiting list. We do have a bigger waiting list than we've had in years past.
Okay.
So it might help cycle the kids through their credits by having 2 staff in there.
if we kept the para, then that would reduce that by one more.
One more by the fire code, yeah.
So if we did all 4, there'd be no cushion.
We'd be spending past the cushion, like 0.3%.
And there'd be nothing for negotiations then?
We've built some in for negotiations. Don't know if what we've done is gonna meet what we need, but if it does, you know, there wouldn't be room for extra, we'd still be going into the fund balance.
And we don't have health insurance costs.
Hopefully it'll be good.
For the 6 assignments, kind of, you take one, you take them all.
We're talking about it as a whole, I guess. The board could consider one at a time if they wanted.
What's 0.3 to get it up to 25 in terms of dollars?
Can I use my phone again?
Yeah.
That is not the right number.
Yes.
On the spot.
Hey Bonnie, can you help them out?
Look for the on button.
About 11,000, $13,000.
Okay.
Just kidding.
It's fine. We did teach math.
So if we just take the top 2 college courses with the 2 that have the 8 students.
If you took the 2 that had the 8 students, that would reduce you about roughly $9,000.
Okay, so it's getting closer to that.
Yep.
If we offered those, do we know that those students would sign up for them again?
I would assume so, but I don't know that for a fact.
Okay.
I know one student that definitely would, because that's what they needed to get their A degree.
We've all heard from that.
Yeah.
They can get that stuff
Yeah, otherwise
They
kids
can go
offer
on
those
site
next
to
year,
their
right?
college classes.
You were gonna offer those 3 next year
The
again,
following,
is your
yes,
plan,
yes,
yeah.
yep.
Means to get there.
That's pretty full.
So if we went with the top two, we're about breaking even.
Top
We're
2
about-
college classes.
We're talking about $2,000.
Correct.
And chemistry had 5 or 5.
But we can offer that again next year, I mean, we're always gonna offer it.
Yes.
And we offered it this year. So the current junior, the current to be seniors would have had the option to take it this year. The one we just completed, so.
Okay.
So if we add them in for this upcoming school year, I mean, do their schedules just revert back to what they previously were?
Yeah, yeah.
What they previously signed up for.
Okay.
Yeah, Katie hasn't finalized any schedules yet. We're waiting for her.
So, we're gonna vote on them separately, or,
I prefer separately myself.
okay,
Approve the budget first,
yes.
the budget without any
Yes,
additions.
so we're gonna approve the proposed budget that is in front of you with,
Without any additions.
yes. So I need a motion for that.
I'll make that motion.
Awesome. There's a motion and a second, any more discussion?
I have a little discussion here. So if we approve this budget, but yet we want all 4 of the options, Brian says that we're at 24.7. How do we get that to 25? Because I feel like we should stay within our fund balance policy of 25%.
We haven't added in, we're still at a cushion right now approving this budget with a cushion of 255,000. So we haven't gotten to that part, to reduce the budget to 25%.
But I'm just saying that if we go one option at a time for those 4 options, right? If all 4 get approved, now we're at 24.7%, is that correct?
Correct.
That is correct.
So what do we do in that scenario?
We can go under, can't we?
We can go under, the board could be okay just to go under. The board could decide not to add all 4, I mean, our policy says we don't have to do anything if we go under 25% unless we hit 15%. So we are still, yes, we're under our policy, but we're not in that have to cut range. Board directed cuts. So the board could choose to live under 25%, that is certainly a possibility.
I just think with our fund balance policy, we should live by it. It's a policy. I mean, students are expected to live by their policies in the student handbook, and I think we should follow our own rules. That's my opinion.
Okay. Anything else, Toby?
No.
So we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. So then we will start with, I'm looking for a motion to approve a first grade teacher at HES to make it 4 sections.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So we'll do roll call. Leo,
Yes.
Toby,
No.
Heather,
Yes.
I got it.
Dave,
Yes.
Angela. Shelley.
Yes.
Jody, yes. is I'm looking for a motion for a behavior interventionist at HFHS.
I'll make that motion.
Is there,
I'll second.
there's a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next is a second teacher at Empower Learning Center. So I am looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is 3 6th assignments. And they are all at HFHS. I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
What would you call it?
6th assignment.
Or,
I'm sorry. Did I say it wrong?
nope, you're good.
College, are we doing college art and Native American literature? Did we determine that the 5 kids in college chem wasn't included because it was offered last year?
Well, I think you just said go for the 3.
You make a friendly amendment to your motion, didn't you?
Okay, so then I do have to make an amendment to the motion.
Oh, no.
You gotta write that down then too.
I made the motion. So I can make a friendly amendment to just do the top 2,
Shelley made
the
the
8 students.
It's just the top 2.
Thank you, Shelley.
Save some of that cushion.
Which would top 2 or college art? Yeah.
College art
Native
and
American literature.
Would Toby also have to approve that
Amendment?
amendment?
Yeah, we need a second on the friendly amendment.
I just feel like, not promising, but saying we're gonna have this college course and then not having the college course, I just don't feel that's right. I feel like if we're gonna have kids sign up for a college course, but then say, no, it's not gonna be there next year. I don't like that idea. Plus, it's college credits. It's a great way to get a head start on college, and I think it's a disservice to our kids. And it's not a huge sum of money, but I think it does a lot it's a lot for us to brag about. And I just feel like maybe there needs to be a different system in place to where there's like a bid for your classes, like a pre-bid, and then at that point we can determine based on the numbers, do we have it in the bid itself based on numbers for the pre-bid, so that there's not just one bid and then that's it, and this class is not offered. I just think we can't just say, do you want this class, but then not offer it. So I feel like we should have the 3rd class as well, even though there's 5, because there's 5 kids affected who'd like to get a head start on college. Just my opinion.
I think that's,
So does that mean, Toby, then that you're not gonna make you don't wanna amend your second?
No, I won't second that.
I think normally that would be fine if we had all 3, but with our budget concerns and us gonna offer it next year, I'd rather see us keep the money, but go for it, whichever way we wanna go.
Okay, so I have a friendly amended motion for adding 2 6-hour assignments for college art and Native American literature. I'm looking for a second.
Yep.
So there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So we will do roll call. Leo,
No.
Toby,
Yes.
Angela, Shelley,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Dave,
No.
Jody, yes. So then the motion passes 5-2. So we are at the bottom. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
I'm looking for a second. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?